Hi everyone, it's Mrs. C. I thought I would just throw together again this video for today's lesson. So quickly, let's recap. So no warm up today. I thought we would recap first. Let's recap yesterday's lesson. So yesterday we talked about collecting like terms. And remember that in order for something to be a like term, it has to have the same variable, the same letter, and the same exponent. Okay, so we need to have same variable and the same exponent. And so you should have gone through and worked on questions 1 to 5 yesterday on that worksheet. So today we're going to learn the next part of that. So it's great that we can collect these like terms. We can add and subtract them together. Now we're going to look at what happens when we multiply things. So before we go into this part of this lesson, before we go into this right here, let's just look down on the bottom of my screen here, and we're going to do a quick example here. I want you guys to think of if I just had this regular question where I had 2 bracket 3 plus, let's just say 4. Okay, and let's talk about what's happening here in terms of our operations, okay? So if I'm looking here, what's happening between this 2 and this 3? What's happening here? So if you're thinking, well, Missy, we're multiplying here, you're right. So whenever I have a number outside of a bracket here, I'm multiplying. Okay, so if I was looking at this, this would be 2 times 3, which is 6, plus 4. So altogether, this would be 10. So we just need to remember here that there's a lot of different ways that we can show multiplying. And one of the main ways that we show it is that if I have a number, you have a number outside of a bracket, usually that means that we're multiplying. Okay, so I want you, before I explain distributive property, let's try one more example here. So let's try 2, 3 plus 2 here, okay? So we know order of operations that we should do our brackets first. So if I was doing my brackets first, I'm going to do that 3 plus 2, which is 5, and that equals 10, okay? But really, what's happening here that we have never told you before, why this works, why it works that we do the brackets first, is because we're actually multiplying everything inside of this bracket by that 2 that's out front of it. So let's try it, and we're going to keep an open mind here. Let's try it this second way just for a second, where I actually do 2 times 3 first. So I'm not going to add first. We're going to pretend, let's just say we didn't know order of operations yet. So I'm going to do 2 times 3 first, plus, and then now I'm going to do 2 times 2. Okay, so 2 times 3 is 6, plus 2 times 2 is 4, 6 plus 4, that's still 10. Okay, so this is the idea that we're working with here in terms of what's happening with the lesson today. So the idea that we are looking at right here is that I can actually take the number that's outside of my bracket and I can multiply that by everything that's inside the bracket, still get the same answer, okay? So what's changing in today's lesson, the only thing that's changing is that, we're going to look at doing this with letters. So we can do the exact same thing with letters, which we have now started calling variables. Okay, so amuse me for a second, and let's just think that I am using the same idea. So we're going to talk about this idea of expanding. So expanding, just like if you were expanding anything in life, that means that we're taking something that was simple, something that was small, we're making it bigger. And we're expanding by using this idea called the distributive property, which is just a big word for our rainbow effect. And that's what we did right here. Do you guys see how we kind of made an upside down rainbow here? That's what this is talking about. And in order to do that, you're just going to take the number or the term, the number or the letter that's outside of the bracket and multiply it by everything that's inside the bracket. Okay, so term just means number or letter that's outside of the bracket, and then we're going to multiply it by everything inside of the bracket, and in our final step here, we are going to collect like terms. All right? Okay, so this is going on, and let's look at this first example. So in my first example, I have a 3 outside of my bracket here. And we're going to multiply it. We're going to make that rainbow by multiplying it by everything inside of the bracket. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Miss C, how am I supposed to multiply my letters? So remember here that I have that invisible 1 in front of my X. Okay, do you guys remember that? I'm just going to throw that bracket back in. Okay, oh goodness. So I have an invisible 1 in front of my X here, so that's really 1X. There we go. It's kind of like I'm working on the smartboard again. Okay, so my 1X here, and I'm going to do 3 times 1. So that's what's happening here. I'm doing 3 times 1. So 3 times 1 is 3. My X is going to come along for the ride. I'm going to write my X beside it. Now I'm going to try my next rainbow. So I already did my 3 and my X. I now have to do my 3 and my 2. So 3 times 2, so I'm going to keep my plus sign in between. 3 times 2 is 6. Okay, so does that make sense? So let's recap that for a second. Everybody put their pens and pencils down. I'm doing 3 times 1 here. That's going to give me 3x. And then I'm doing 3 times 2 here, which is where I get my 6. Okay. Now, we said the last step of this is to collect like terms. So if I'm looking at here, I have something with an X and something with nothing. So those don't have the same letters. They don't have the same letters or the same exponents. So here, there are no like terms to collect. And what that means, though, is that 3x plus 6, so that means, so remember, therefore, our 3 dots, 3x plus 6 is my final answer. Okay, just going to make a little space here for me to write. Okay, awesome. So now let's look at B. So in B, it's a little bit more complicated, but that's okay. We can deal with this. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to forget about this 11Q until the very last step. So we're just going to put this in our pocket. It's just going to sit there for a second. So here I have a 2 outside of my Q. I'm going to make my first rainbow here. So 2 times 1Q is going to give me 2 Qs. Okay. Now I'm going to make my second rainbow. 2 times 3 is going to give me 6. Now I'm not going to do 2 times 11Q because my 11Q here is not inside of the bracket. So this is not inside the bracket, so I don't multiply. Okay. So 2Q plus 6. Now I'm just going to write my 11Q plus 11Q. Notice that my signs are staying the same right beside it. Okay, so 2 times Q is 2Q. 2 times 3 is 6. And I'm just going to bring down my 11Q. And remember, I'm not multiplying 11 by 2 because it's not inside of the bracket. All right? Now, our last step is to collect like terms. So I have a Q here and a Q here. Both have the same exponent. I can add those together. So if I have 2Q, remember from yesterday, I like to write them beside each other, plus 11Q plus 6. 2 plus 11, that's going to give me 13. So altogether, I have 13 Qs plus 6. And I have no other like terms here to collect. So this is going to give me a good science smiley face. Okay, and again, feel free to pause and go back to listen if you need extra help right now. Okay, so now let's look at the last one. So in my last one, you're going to notice that this is going to be a double whammy because I have 2 sets of brackets. That's okay. We can totally deal with this. But I'm actually just going to give myself a little bit more space to deal with it. So I'm going to zoom in a lot here. Okay, so here I have 2 sets of brackets. I'm going to end up making 2 sets of rainbows, okay? So out front of my first bracket, I have a -2, and I'm going to do exactly what we were doing before. I'm going to make my rainbow between my -2 and my E. Notice here that now I have a negative number out front of my 2. So what that means is I'm going to do negative 2 times that invisible 1 that's here. Okay, so I'm doing negative 2 times 1. That gives me a negative 2. My e comes along for the ride. I'm then going to do negative 2 times negative 7. Remember here that in this one, a negative times a negative actually gives me a positive number. So negative and a negative, that's going to give me a positive. Okay. And 2 times 7 is 14. So I actually, let's just put our pens and pencils down for a second. I had a question yesterday about how do you know whether to put a negative or a subtract sign, or a positive or an adding sign. And these are good questions. And I think that really the easiest way to kind of wrap our heads around this is to think of negative and subtracting as the same thing. So if I subtract a positive number, so let's talk about money. I have $20 in my bank account, okay? And let's just say I'm going to spend $10 on pizza. So if I subtract $10, I'm still going to have $10 in my bank account. Does that make sense? So I've subtracted a positive number. I'm still going to have $10 in my bank account. Now let's just say I still have $20 and I'm about to put it into my bank account. But now my bank account has negative $10 in it right now. I overspent a little bit. So I go and put $20 in my bank account. Well, I still end up with that $10. So it doesn't matter if we're dealing with negative numbers or if we're thinking of subtracting them. The only thing that matters here is that you need to remember that if I'm multiplying and my signs are the same, they become positive. And if I'm multiplying and my signs are different, now that's going to give a negative. Okay? So if that confused you, just ignore it. But it's, I think, a hard thing for us to understand sometimes whether or not we're dealing with adding or positive numbers, but it's the same thing. Okay? All right. So if I go back to this question, I just did my negative 2 times 1e. That's a negative 2e. And then I did negative 2 times negative 7. That's going to give me positive 14 because those signs are the same. So that gives me a positive number here. So I'm going to make my second rainbow here. Use green this time. I have negative 4 out front. I'm going to multiply that by my negative 3. And we just said a negative and a negative are going to make a positive. So I know that my sign right here is going to be positive. And 4 times 3 is 12. My e comes along for the ride. Okay. Negative 4 times positive 5. Now a negative and positive, my numbers are opposite. Negative 4 times positive. So now I'm going to have a negative. Oops. Make it the same color. And 4 times 5 is 20. All right, so we're going to collect our like terms. What I like to do in this step is I like to actually gather them. Okay, so I'm not going to do any adding or subtracting here. I'm just going to write my like terms beside each other. So my first like term here is negative 2e. I'm going to write that here. Now I'm going to find my other e, which is my 12. Okay, and the sign that's right in front of it, that's what I'm going to put here. So there's a plus 12e here. So then this becomes a plus 12e here. Okay, I've dealt with my e's. I'm going to cross them off. That lets me know that I've gathered them. Okay, my next thing on my list then is this 14. So now I'm going to add my 14. Okay, I've already dealt with this. So now I go to my negative 20, and it's going to be negative because that's the sign that's right in front of it, or subtract 20. Okay, same thing. Now, if I'm looking at here, I have my letters beside each other, and I have things that don't have letters beside each other. So I'm going to gather these all up. So to do this, I know that my unit here, or my letter that's the same, is going to be an E. I just have to figure out what number goes in front. So now I have a negative 2, and I'm going to add 12. So it's like you had negative $2 in your bank account. You add $12 in. That's going to leave you with $10. Okay, so I have 10 E's. Plus, now I have 14, and I'm going to subtract 20. So you have $14 in your bank account, but you need to spend 20. That means that you're going to be in the hole $6. Okay, so I'm at negative $6. So this is negative 6 here. Now notice I put that plus sign here because it's in front of my 14, and that was intuitive for me to do. But now I have two signs beside each other. That's okay, but we just need to figure out what sign is going to be kind of the ruling sign here. And like I said before, if they are opposite, so I have a plus and a negative, that means that this is going to be a negative. So this is going to work out to being 10e minus 6. Okay? You do not have to do this part right here. You could have just written 10e subtract 6. That's okay. Science smiley face. Okay? So just to kind of go over the key points here, we multiplied out our brackets. So we distributed, we made rainbows. We multiplied the number that's in front by everything inside of my bracket. And then I gathered my like terms. And then I simplified my like terms. I added or subtracted them together so that I only had one of each, okay? So I went from having two sets of e's, now I have one set of e. I went from having two sets of numbers, and now I have one set of numbers. Okay, so that's kind of what we did here. So that's how we expand numbers. Basically what you're going to do, so you've already done you've already done 1 to 5 on your worksheet. So now you're going to do 6 to 12 on your worksheet. I'm going to post the answers. So this is what I'm doing. I'm going to post the answers to 1 to 5. You can expect that from me by the end of the day today. So I'll post the answers from 1 to 5. Sorry about that. 1 to 5. And then what's going to happen is that if you have any problems with these ones, please email me. Okay? And I can do another video taking them up if we need to. And then tomorrow I will post the answers to 6 to 12. All right? So hopefully you're finding this okay. Like I said, expect about 3 hours of work a week, and sometimes that's not going to look like 3 1-hour sessions. I think some of you were thinking, hey, Misty, I didn't do enough work today. It didn't take me a full hour. That's okay, because sometimes I might break the lessons up. I don't want to do super long videos. I think if we aim for 20 minutes of me talking because I'm the all-star and you guys miss me and my wonderful voice, that's enough. And I know that a lot of you are probably needing chocolate milk breaks or bathroom breaks, and that's okay too. So just remember that you can pause and rewind the video, and you can go back and see kind of what's going on, rewatch it again, maybe pick some highlights out of it, and then let me know if you have any problems, okay? I hope that you guys are staying safe. Remember to practice physical distancing, but we can still be social. You can still reach out, and I miss you all.